Hey everybody, welcome to the lunchtime devotion in the Word of God. It is 12:24 on January 20th, and we are going to go through 2 Samuel chapter 18 today at lunch and try to get through some of this chapter. It's kind of a big chapter and kind of an important one too. It's always a bummer when someone loses a son or a daughter, and I can't imagine the pain of what it would be like to lose a child. I mean, that has got to be just really intense. So we're gonna kind of see that today with David. He's already lost other kids before, so this isn't the first time, but it's always tragic, it seems like, in David's life. Nothing's very simple and easy, and that might be like your life too. It might be a difficult stretch for you. Yeah, you might have had a life too where it's just you've seen a lot of trial and tribulation, and certainly David has had his own fair share. So where we pick things up in 2 Samuel 18 in our devotion, and it's nice to be doing it at lunch today. It's a super beautiful day outside. Wow, just awesome. But let's get into it. So David mustered the men who were with him and appointed over them commanders of thousands and commanders of hundreds. And it said, David sent the troops out, a third under the command of Joab, a third under Joab's brother Abishai, son of Zeruiah, and a third under Ittai the Gittite. The king told the troops, I myself will surely march out with you. So David says, hey, okay, we're going to go to war. We're going to go to war with Absalom. Absalom's taken over Jerusalem. David is gonna hears news that Absalom's gonna come out and track David down, and so David's preparing the men and getting ready for the battle. Ooh, getting ready for the battle. That's a good spiritual idea too, huh? Am I ready for the battle? Am I prepared for the fight? Am I prepared in a sense for the spiritual battle? That's what the New Testament always stresses, right? Being prepared for that spiritual battle that we're in. And so we can kind of think about that in our devotion is, God help us to be ready, spiritually ready for the next time of trial and temptation. We can't change yesterday or the day before, but we have today. So we just take it one day at a time and ask God that we put on that full armor of God, as it says in Ephesians, and be ready to take our stand. For our warfare is not between flesh and blood, right? It says in the book of Ephesians. So David's preparing himself for a real physical battle. And it says, but the men said, you must not go out. If we are forced to flee, they won't care about us. Even if half of us die, they won't care. But you are worth 10,000 of us. It would be better now for you to give us support from the city. The king answered, I will do whatever seems best to you. I love this. The king takes the advice from his assistants, if you will, his military commanders. And I just think that's really cool and humbling, for David. David, in the description of his life in the last chapter, or his military life, man, this guy was a warrior. This guy was a battler. And it's neat that someone who's such a good, combatant in warfare has the humility to be able to say, hey, you know what? I'm going to listen to you guys and your strategy here. And I think I need to be that way. I think I need to be a person who's able to know or kind of discern good advice when it comes my way. and not just brush it aside and just go, oh no, I'm going to rely on my knowledge and what I've learned and what I know. Yeah, that's good, but you do have advisors for a purpose, and that's, to help you, and I need to pay attention to that in my life. So the king stood beside the gate while all the men marched out in units of hundreds and of thousands. The king commanded Joab, Abishai, and Ittai, be gentle with the young man Absalom for my sake. And all the troops heard the king giving orders concerning Absalom to each of the commanders. Be gentle with my son. The army marched into the field to fight Israel, and the battle took place in the forest of Ephraim. There the army of Israel was defeated by David's men, and the casualties that day were great. 20,000 men. Wow. 20,000 men dead as a result of what? Absalom being mad at his dad and seeking justice on his terms, on Absalom's terms. He kills his brother, who raped Absalom's sister, and David did nothing about it, and so Absalom went rogue and probably had a lot of good reasoning behind it. But the result of this inner family issue we see at this point now is 20,000 people. I tell you, man, that is some massive ramifications for a family squabble. And it just breaks my heart to think that, when families get upset at each other and they don't love and they don't have patience and kindness, right? Or self-control, all these things that are needed in a family, in relationships, then there are some casualties that happen. And man, this one is extreme. So talk about your decisions having ramifications. David's decisions having massive ramifications. Absalom's decisions having incredible ramifications. 20,000 people die. Did those people need to die? Did they, what was this war? What was this little civil war, family warfare going on? Did these people have to be brought into this family issue? So many things that come up, right? Wars today are fought through so many family issues. So many, few people are making decisions that affect so many people, right? In the military. And their lives are put in danger because of people's decisions behind closed doors. It's just radical, right? How, this happens. And massive amounts of people have a potential to die. Unreal, right? Yeah, our decisions do matter. We got to be quick to try to reconcile as much as we can. The Bible says, as much as it depends on us, live at peace with all people. And that's something that we have to learn to do. No doubt about it. We have to learn. Now, 20,000 people die. The battle spread out over the whole countryside, and the forest claimed more lives that day than the sword. And it says, now Absalom happened to meet David's men. He was riding his mule, and as the mule went under the thick branches of a large oak, right? Here the forest is going to take him, I guess. It says, Absalom's head got caught in a tree, and he was left hanging in midair, while the mule he was riding kept on going. Then one of the men saw this. He told Joab, I just saw Absalom hanging in an oak tree. Remember, this dude's hair, Absalom, was pretty amazing. This guy only cut it once a year. So, hey, maybe I'll tell people, hey, if they say, why didn't you cut your hair? I'll just say, I'm going to cut it once a year. Joke. And then it says, Joab said to the man who had told him this, what? You saw him? Why didn't you strike him to the ground right there? Then I would have had to give you 10 shekels of silver and a warrior's belt. So Joab, who's quite the man of a warrior himself, man of blood for sure, Joab says, go strike him down, dude. Take him out. Right? Why didn't you take him out? I would have gave you some money for that. But the man replied, even at 1,000 shekels were weighed into my hands, I would not lift my hand against the king's son. In our hearing, the king commanded you and Abishai and Attai, protect the young man Absalom for my sake. And if I had put my life in jeopardy and nothing is hidden from the king, you would have kept your distance from me. Joab said, I'm not going to wait like this for you. So he took 3 javelins in his hand and plunged them into Absalom's heart while Absalom was still alive in the oak tree. And 10 of Joab's armor bearers surrounded Absalom, struck him, and killed him. So what does Joab do? He goes nuts, right? David's heart is going to break. He wants his son to be protected, but one of his military commanders, Joab, is a violent man and cannot control his anger. And maybe Joab feels justified because of what Absalom has done in creating this little civil war, or this big civil war between the families, and coming in, invading Jerusalem, all that. And what does Joab do as a man of war? He says, we are to kill this person. It doesn't matter what King David says. It is up to me to do what needs to be done. He takes things into his own hands. He doesn't listen to the king. Woo, what a message for us. Do I listen to the king? Do I take matters into my own hands? You know, in conflict situations, do I go to the Word and let the Word of God speak to me on how to handle the situation? Or do I just pick up the phone and call that person and get mad and let my emotions of anger or impatience or frustration, come out, instead of going to the Word and say, live peaceably with all people? Learn to love people, even people at the time that seem to be enemies. Am I loving them? Powerful, right? Listen to the king in conflict. And so Joab, kills Absalom. Then Joab sounded the trumpet, and the troops stopped pursuing Israel, for Joab halted them. They took Absalom, threw him into a big pit in the forest, and piled up a large heap of rocks over him. Meanwhile, all the Israelites fled to their homes. Yeah, Absalom by this time was pretty mangled. Caught up in an oak tree, 3 javelins, then people just jacked him. They kept striking him and killing him, stabbing him probably. So during his lifetime, Absalom had taken a pillar and erected it in the king's valley as a monument to himself, for he thought, I have no son to carry on the memory of my name. He named the pillar after himself, and it is called Absalom's monument to this day. And so David is going to just break. Now, Ahimaaz, son of Zadok, said, let me run and take the news to the king that the Lord has delivered him from his hand of his enemies. You are not the one to take the news today, Joab told him. You may take the news another time, but you must not do so today, because this king's son is dead. Then Joab said to a Cushite, go tell the king what you have seen. The Cushite bowed before Joab and ran off. Now Joab goes, hey, you know what? I don't want you to go to the king and tell him, because the king might be a little mad. So what does he do? He tells a Cushite and says, you go tell the king. You go before the king and tell him what happened. And Ahimaaz, son of Zadok, again said to Joab, come that may, please let me run behind the Cushite. But Joab replied, my son, why do you want to go? You don't have any news that will bring you a reward. You see Joab's heart? It's it's not a good heart, right? Instead of just going and being honest, there's no way he's going to be honest. There's no way he wants to say someone he cares for to go to David and tell him the news that his son's dead and the way he died. So Joab's got just a real bent attitude. And he said, "Come what may, I want to run." So Joab said, "Run." Then Ahimaaz ran by the way of the plain and outran the Cushite. While David was sitting between the inner and outer gates, the watchman went up to the roof of the gateway by the wall, and as he looked out, he saw a man running alone. The watchman called out to the king and reported it. The king said, "If he is alone, he must have good news." And the man came closer and closer. Then the watchman saw another man running, and he called down to the gatekeeper, "Look, another man is running alone." And the king said, "He must be bringing good news too." The watchman said, "It seems to me that the first one runs like Ahimaaz, son of Zadok." "He is a good man," the king said. "He comes with good news." Then Ahimaaz, who runs fast, by the way, called out to the king, "All is well." He bowed down before the king with his face to the ground and said, "Praise be to the Lord your God. He has delivered up the man who lifted their hands against my lord the king." The king asked, "Is the young man Absalom safe?" Ahimaaz answered, "I saw great confusion just as Joab was about to send the king's servant and me, your servant, but I don't know what it was." The king said, "Stand aside and wait here." So he stepped aside and stood there. Then the Cushite arrived and said, "My lord the king, hear the good news. The Lord has delivered you today from all those who rose up against you." The king asked the Cushite, "Is the young man Absalom safe?" The Cushite replied, "May the enemies of the Lord the king and all who rise up to harm you be like that young man." So the Cushite tells the truth. He says he's telling the truth. He's giving it to David straight up. Ahimaaz, he beat around the bush, right, with King David. He didn't know. He kind of totally skirted, us off the question that King David asked. "Hey, is my son alive?" He went, "I don't really know." But the Cushite says, "Hey, anybody who I hope anybody who wants to harm you, David, I hope their punishment's like this guy, your son, Absalom." Oh, and then the king was shaken. He went up to the room over the gateway and wept. As he wept, he said, "Oh, my son Absalom, my son Absalom, if only I had died instead of you. Oh, Absalom, my son, my son." So David is just busted. He's just so broke at this point, right? The Cushite just gives it to him and says, "Man, this your son did die." And David goes off away and breaks down. And I'm sure at that point was flooded with so many emotions. So, man, really sad, huh? How, family conflict can really have ramifications. And if we don't make peace with it, then, we could really end up like King David in a place of a lot of weeping, a lot of sadness in our lives. And so in conflict, we want to do what the word says. We want to be able to hold our tongue, not let our tongue get us in trouble. But if we need to speak, we speak with love, we speak with compassion, we speak with gentleness. If we need to correct or admonish, we do so in loving ways. And then at the end of the day, at least we go, "God, I wanted to glorify you in this. I didn't want to just do it on my own, go my own route." Yeah, you see the character of Joab, not a good character. Definitely don't want to be a Joab, And we see that this Cushite is the one who actually tells David the truth. He does it in a kind of a harsh way, I'd say, but he got the point across to King David, and man, David certainly is seeing the fulfillment of what God said to him, and that is, man, your house is going to be a divided one. It's going to be one that is going to cause you much pain, and here we see it. So, walk by the fruit of the Spirit, and that is love, right? And that's what we want to do. So, man, what a devotion. What a time in the Word. And just to think through this passage and see really the ramifications of conflict that is unresolved. And really makes me think, hey, God, help me to, again, deal with matters quickly and in a right way. So you guys take care. Have a great one. It's really wonderful doing the Devo at lunch. Bye-bye.